Greetings and welcome to History 642, Colonial Revolutionary America. This introductory lecture is designed to just introduce some definitions and a little bit of history of historical writing to provide context for this class as far as the interpretations of events. So, without further ado, the definition that we're using, very broad definition of colonialism, is any nation-state expanding beyond its original borders. I won't go into too much. We'll talk about some of the states that combine to form these European nation-states a little bit, but for now, these nation-states like France, England, Spain, the Netherlands, expand beyond their borders, primarily searching for resources and markets. And you'll find also that I use the term empire pretty much interchangeably with colonialism in this class, although empire can take other forms other than colonialism. And as we'll see here as we move through these types of empires, military empire or colonialism is obviously where it's primarily a military operation. The best example of this in the early modern period is the Spanish conquistadors, who were a military class, kind of almost a feudal knighthood class that came to the New World searching for resources and markets. In some cases set up their own private kingdoms, paying their dues to the king in the church. Here is a woodcut from the 16th century that shows the conquistadors torturing Native Americans for whatever reason. Maybe they want them to say where the gold is. But anyway, it's definitely a military operation. Settler colonialism. This is the kind best known in North America, certainly Australia, New Zealand. These are all settler colonial societies. This is an early settler colony in New England, a Puritan village. This, of course, is a recreation for the tourists for a historical context. It's like some reenactment going on here or something, but settler colonialism, as we'll see, was the main form of colonialism in North America. And then the trading posts. The Dutch were this was a popular way for them to spread their influence around the world. And the Dutch in North America, here is an artist's recreation of Fort Orange, which is where Albany, New York is today. Fort Orange was at the confluence of the Mohawk River, which was the river that ran down from the west, what would eventually be western New York, from the Iroquois nations, where the Dutch traded European manufactured goods for furs primarily. The confluence of the Mohawk River and the Hudson River. And here is a Fort Orange and a Dutch ship flying the Dutch colors in the river. So, trading post empire, and the Dutch are best known for those, although all these Western European countries practice that to some extent. So those are our types and definitions of empire and colonialism. Now a brief word about historical approaches. In the early republic, the first Americans to write American history were, of course, those who had defeated the British, or at least driven the British off and established an independent country. They were known as the Whigs, and the Whigs wrote the first histories of the U.S., and their tale was one of a very heroic tale of spreading democracy across the great waters and bringing civilization to the heathen savage and that kind of thing. A very ethnocentric view of history. And to define ethnocentrism just rudimentarily, seeing other cultures with your own culture's values. This is kind of the default human setting. We all do it, and certainly the Whigs did when they wrote history. They saw everything from their own eyes. Native Americans, African Americans, even women were bit players in this great triumph of the Anglo-Saxon race. That's kind of how Whig history reads, and it's there's still a little Whig history around being written, but it's a pretty small minority right now. Professional historians in the 20th century have made an effort to see in a different light, using cultural relativity, which is basically seeing other cultures with that culture's values. This is a little harder to do than ethnocentrism. You have to work at it a little bit when you see people from another culture doing things you don't understand. Rather than just judging it, you inquire, try to find out why they do what they do. The best example that I know of is among the peoples of the Northern Plains, who gather together for Sundance every summer. Often the main feast, they eat a dog, which to most Anglo-Saxon or European sensibilities, eating a dog is repulsive. And an ethnocentric view, you would just say that, just stick with it, and that would be that. But to practice cultural relativity, you inquire, try to find out why these people are eating a dog. And come to find out, you will learn that Native Americans believe that they, or at least the traditional view, that they imbibe the qualities of the animals that they eat. And so when you have an extended family gathering, a ceremony, a festival like Sundance, and everyone is eating a dog, what are you imbibing? Well, dogs, of course, are known for their loyalty. So that is the nature of that particular practice. And from that you can see why they're eating a dog. And they're not make you want to eat a dog, and that's fine, but at least you get it, why they do it. And that's practicing cultural relativity. So that's what we're going to do in this class as we go through these different cultures and different events. And of course, historical events look very different depending on where you are on the event horizon, you know, how things are happening. If you're Native American or African American or even a woman, history can look very different to you. So that's also a part of cultural relativity, is perspective. An example of this that I want to include in this introductory lecture, well, it's influenced, first, it's influenced by late 19th, early 20th century anthropology. Anthropologists went out and lived with Native Americans, they lived with African Americans, they lived in immigrant communities that had come over from Europe, the Romanians and Russians, Ukrainians, Italians, Poles, Czechs, people that were pretty unfamiliar to most Anglo-Saxon Americans. And what they concluded was that these cultures were quite viable, valid, they worked, and that kind of gave rise to the idea of what we today call pluralism, the idea that there can be more than one culture and different cultures can learn from each other and adapt, and more than one culture is fine and good. So that's all related to cultural relativity as well. But this other view, perspective on history, called post-colonial, and in South Asia, India, Pakistan, it's known as subaltern history, is a perspective of the colonized, and this has emerged especially since World War II, when European empires withdrew from many of those countries, and scholars from those countries began to write their own history. We got this other view. What was it like to be colonized? What is it like to be colonized? So that's another perspective, although it's not a huge body of literature. per se in North America, because there really is no post-colonial North America, arguably. Still, we look at the perspective of Native Americans, people who were colonized. Examples of this, best known, Edward Said, who was a Turkish scholar involved in literary criticism, wrote a famous book called Orientalism. And Ranajit Guha of India is kind of considered the father of subaltern history. So these are some different perspectives of historical writing that are kind of provide a background for the history I'm presenting in this class, and then we defined some of these different types of empires and colonialism, and so that's about all I'm going to offer in this lecture. We will return with a discussion of pre-Columbian North America from a culturally relative point of view. And I'll talk to you then.